FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
So you got to wonder who's left to support Obama. It's only the Kool-Aid drinkers and those who stopped thinking decades ago. Well, we all know about them. Here to talk about it, good friend Wayne Allyn Root. Wayne, how are you?
Hey, Kerry, how are you?
All right. So those poll numbers, they tell a story that if you're a Democrat, it's pretty close to a near-death experience, isn't it?
Well, actually, if you're a Democrat, they don't think anything's wrong at all. So let's say it in a different way. If you're a delusional Democrat, they want to make believe everything's fine. But I've interpreted the poll numbers so that even delusional Democrats can tell what's going on. And by the way, this falls exactly in line with what I predicted in my book, The Ultimate Obama Survival Guide. Because what I said was that, I wrote the book after Obama had won his re-election and was beginning his second term. And I said that now the cloak is off. He doesn't have to pretend he's a moderate or a uniter, not a divider. He can be the absolute extreme radical socialist Marxist communist that he is. That's what he is, an ideologue, a radical, in my opinion, communist ideologue. And he hides it and disguises it occasionally. He'll throw a bone to try to look moderate and make it look like he's a good guy. And he won't have to do that anymore because he's never going to face voters again. And when he does that, the reaction to that is people are going to realize how extreme he is, and his popularity is going to fall like a rock. And he's going to become one of the most unpopular presidents, if not the most unpopular in American history. Well, guess what? My book was right. That's exactly what's happening. Well, and so, the number one thing that I think opened everyone's eyes, Kerry, was Obamacare. My wife actually, as we right now do this interview, my wife just told me a story. She just got back from having her nails done. And the girl at the nail salon, she just assumed for various reasons was a Democrat. And she never brings up politics with her, my wife. My wife actually never brings up politics with anyone because she doesn't want to get in a big debate and a big argument and have someone she likes suddenly not like her because they have different political views. So she didn't bring it up. The woman brought it up. And the woman went on a tirade about how she's lost her health insurance because of Obamacare and can't find another one, and the price is now through the roof and she can't afford it. And she may just have to close her nail salon, and she doesn't know what it's going to do, and her life's been turned upside down by Barack Obama, and she hates that man. Folks, this is happening all across America. Normal people who are not Kool-Aid drinking, Obama brainwashed lobotomy victims or zombies are no longer fans of Barack Obama. And so when I saw the Fox poll from a couple weeks ago now, it was about 10 days ago, that showed Obama at 38% approval rating, that inspired me to write a commentary. And the commentary was that Obama's poll numbers are amazing. And it's been, I wrote that 10 days ago, it's been the number one through number 5 most popular story of Fox News for 10 days in a row. Very unusual, by the way. I've written some really big stories for Fox, but nothing has ever stayed in the top 5 for 10 days in a row. Usually they read it, it's a big hit, and they move on. This one has a life of its own, and I think it's because people it really struck a chord. There's about 40% of the electorate, Kerry, that the electorate, if you didn't hear me say that properly, 40% of the electorate, 40% of voters.
Electorate,
40% of the voters, let's say it's simple, who just are brainwashed, and they're going to always be Democrats. They vote for a Democrat, not just Obama, any Democrat running from a prison cell, they vote for him. They vote for somebody who's facing murder charges. I'm really convinced, right between 30 and 40% for a guy charged with murder. But they'll just vote automatically for a Democrat. And a lot of them are rabid Obama supporters, very loyal to him. So 40% or so will always vote for him. And then, of course, you can even break it down to how many people are getting checks from government. 47%. So it's hard to ever break below 40 for a Democrat, let alone Obama. He's got black voters and Hispanic voters. No matter what you do, because of the color of his skin, because he's a man of color, they think they have to support him, even as he destroys their unemployment, their jobs, their economy. If you look at it, much worse. Black unemployment just about double white unemployment. So what has Obama done for you? So if you have to keep it around 40%, no matter what you do, then how could it be at 38%? And so the answer is that outside of black voters, Latino voters, Obama's strong suits, gay voters, single women voters, outside of brainwashed Kool-Aid drinking Democratic zombies, there's no one left. He's at zero, absolutely zero. As I say, among the white middle class, he's in the single digits. There's no question about this.
Yeah.
And it's scary because it shows you what a bad president he is. The only thing he can get at this point is people to vote for him because of the color of his skin. Isn't that funny? His supporters would say, we must be racist if you're white and you're voting against him now or you don't support him now, when in reality, I don't know a single white person who's ever made a decision based on the color of a candidate's skin in the last, 10 years. Let's not go back, 100 years. Let's not pretend there was never racism, because that wouldn't be true. But not in the generation I've grown up in, and certainly not now. People don't vote against Obama because he's black, but they do vote for him because he's black, and that is racism. That's the irony.
Yeah, it really is ironic. And there's something else, though. Not to get too much into the psychodynamics of the man, but he's been called a malignant narcissist, and that means he needs universal adulation, much like the Maoist, the Stalinist, the Leninist. He needs that acceptance. He can't stand any criticism, valid or otherwise, and it has to be tearing him up inside. It's got to be destroying the man. The fact that he's been rejected by 62% of the population. Can you imagine what that's doing to him, Wayne?
Yeah, but narcissists and egomaniacs, and he's all the above, have a way of rationalizing things. And of course, you spent your whole life as president around sycophants. So yes, the polls are bad, and I'm sure that bothers him, absolutely. But yet at the same time, everyone around him loves him and bows to him and adores him. He's the American Idol, and every fundraising event, every Democratic event, and every staged speech he shows up at, his advancement have made sure only Democrats need apply, so he gets nonstop standing ovations. So you do live in a bit of a bubble. Yeah, I'm sure he knows the national polls, but I'm sure they keep most of the information away from him. And it's not like you wake up in the morning as president and you read, 100 newspapers. He has no time for that. Your meetings start right away with the world's leaders. So I think you get press briefings from your top aides, Kerry, and I'll bet they leave the really bad information out. And if he does read one newspaper in the morning with a cup of coffee, it's the New York Times or the Washington Post, both of which are extremely liberal, so they won't tell the truth either. So, I think he's around people that love him all day long and tell him how great he is, and he doesn't realize how badly his approval has dropped. My guess is he doesn't know, or he rationalizes completely that it's just, due to racism.
Yeah, well, but then again, you hear him talking about Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, and I'll bet in the privacy of the White House, he's even talking about you, Wayne, because you get inside what's called the decision loop of your adversary, and they can't stop talking about you.
Well, I'll tell you what
dominate their thoughts.
I'll tell you what's funny. 3 years ago, I think it was 2011, that Sotomayor was nominated. Wasn't that 2011?
Yeah.
I believe it was right around there. It might have been 2010. But right around there was a NBC special 3-hour TV show. And I believe it was called A Day in the White House, or a day of crisis in the White House, one or the other. And it was a look at how the White House runs in one 24-hour period, how they deal with crisis. And I thought it was funny because my phone started ringing, Kerry.
Yeah.
And, 10 calls in a matter of a couple minutes. I was like, what's going on? And I finally answered one. I was at the dinner table, and it was 6 o'clock where I am in Las Vegas, California time. And the reason the phones are ringing is because it was 9 o'clock on the East Coast. And this NBC special had started, I guess, at 8 and was running until 10 or 11. And so 9 o'clock East Coast time, my photo came on the screen in a special about the White House. And why did my photo come on the screen? Because they were talking about the day they had their cameras allowed, absolute unfettered access to the White House, including the crisis room, was the day that Sotomayor had been nominated for Supreme Court Justice. Mm-hmm. And all the pundits were ripping Obama to shreds, especially her statement that an Hispanic woman is smarter and more capable of being a good judge than a white male. And I had ripped that statement to shreds on Fox News that morning. And they showed me on the screen, and they showed me talking for a couple of sentences while they were saying the White House must react to this immediate crisis while our cameras are here. And Wayne Root is on the screen. And I thought it was so interesting that, who am I? I'm a nobody. I'm a butcher's son in Las Vegas, Nevada. But I've had this big of an effect on a guy who was my classmate at Columbia University, and I think he knows me very well. I think he's very well aware of what I say about him. And I think his aides are very well aware, and that's why they sicked the IRS on me. So you're right. I think they are. I'm certainly on their mind if they're not talking about me, Kerry.
Yeah, I mean, you're in their decision loop. That's what it comes down to. And anytime you get in your adversary's decision loop, and like I say, they can insulate him, they can, but they wouldn't. Look, if you were a nobody and you didn't make any difference, Wayne, why would they bother going after you with the IRS? You know?
Right. Well, there's
Why?
no question. Listen, but I think it's also that they've got very thin skin. And because Obama has such a giant ego and he thinks he's God, or certainly the son of God, I think anyone who criticizes him immediately gets on a target list. He's got very thin skin. Why do I say that? I'm making myself seem smaller, not bigger. But I admit, he goes after everyone. You don't have to be important. A guy was on Fox News 2 months ago ripping to shreds Obamacare because he was a stage 4 terminal cancer victim, dying of cancer, and he had his health insurance taken away. And he said, I voted for Obama because I thought he'd give me free health insurance. And I'm so angry now, I wish I could take my vote back. Well, he came home and 4 days later had an IRS audit waiting for him. So, I mean, he's not affecting Obama's life. It was a one-time appearance. Their skin is so thin, Kerry, that when you think you're the son of God and someone dares to criticize you, it's kind of like Jesus. You wind up with your hands on a cross and a nail through your arm.
Yeah, well, I think you give yourself you don't give yourself enough credit here. I think you got to give yourself a little more. You're in the public eye. You beat them in the IRS. And, let's face it, he can't stand any criticism, no matter where it comes from. And the higher up the criticism comes from, the more he feels he has to go after it and try to squelch it. And
well, he'll be real happy to see my new article up at the Blaze as we speak, as we do this interview. It's at Glenn Beck's website. It's called Obama Hasn't Changed Since Columbia University. And it's got a big picture of Obama in New York City when he supposedly went to Columbia University. So I think it's very funny. I think he's going to love this one. He's going to have a heart attack when he sees this one.
Yeah, well, you never know, right? You never know what's going to happen with him.
Here's what I pointed out. Here's my argument. I've been saying for 5 years, people say, first of all, why does Wayne Root keep bringing up Obama at Columbia? What's 30 years ago at college, 30-plus years ago, 32 years ago, got to do with the man as president now? And I keep arguing it has everything to do with the president now. And I think now I can prove it and connect the dots for the first time. I've always argued that what happened at Columbia is very reflective of who Obama is. And there's several things that happened at Columbia that are mysterious and worrisome and frightening, but I'm only dealing with one of them in this article, and that's that I never saw him there, that I know nothing about him, and I admit I know nothing about him. Never met him, never saw him, never heard of him. And I thought I knew every single political science major at Columbia University. There's no way that I spent 4 years at that college, Kerry, and he was a political science major at pre-law, and I was political science at pre-law. I don't have to have been his friend, but I should have run across him once. I should have seen him once, even if I never spoke to him. He certainly, as I look at the picture, I would remember him in a second, and he would have stood out. There were almost no African Americans at Columbia, and he was tall. There's no way I wouldn't have known him, but I never saw him in my life, never heard of him in my life, never saw him in a class, and certainly never met him. And at our 30th reunion last year, I went up to my history professor, Henry Graff, one of the most famous historians in college history, not just Columbia, but of any college system. He's just a great presidential historian and a great head of the history department at Columbia for 46 years. And I grabbed him and said, what's the deal? Did you know Obama? He said, no, I'm very worried he never went here. It's a strange story because he was never in any of my classes, Wayne, and you can't graduate Columbia University as a political science major and pre-law without ever going into one of my classes. And I've checked the records. I've looked back. He wasn't registered under that name. I never saw him, never heard of him, never met him. He says the same thing I do. So the article I wrote is that people got me wrong. They all assume what I'm trying to do is malign Obama and say he never went there, and that's not what I ever said. What I always meant, and what I say in many interviews, Kerry, is that I think Obama's behavior at Columbia gives you great insight into what kind of a president he is right now. I think he thought he was too good for Columbia University. I think Obama's always been an egomaniac, and he thinks he's brilliant, and he's above it all, and he's too good to have to do the work that other little people have to do. So he got into Columbia, which inflated his ego even more, because he talked his way in, even though he had lousy grades, and then he thought he was God's gift to the world, and he didn't want to go to do the work. He didn't want to go to class. I believe he was there for 2 years. He transferred in the middle of his, right after his sophomore year. So I believe he was there. I believe he graduated. I don't believe he ever went to class. He took his gentleman's C or D, and he left. And I think that's the story of Barack Obama's life. And I tie it together in this article to what kind of a president he's been. We face a possibility, I'm not saying a likelihood, but a possibility of events that could lead to World War III with Russia attacking Ukraine. And yet Barack Obama didn't even bother attending the last 2 national security meetings that were focused on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And before anyone out there thinks I'm making this up or exaggerating or it's just conservative rhetoric, this was all reported on by major media, including Reuters. Everybody knows the last 2 national security meetings, Obama wasn't there. Now, if someone could tell me he had more important things to do, during one of those meetings, Kerry, he chose to attend a White House film festival. We're talking about national security and a Russian invasion of Ukraine that many people believe will lead to Russia trying to invade many other countries and a brand new Cold War. And he went to a White House film festival. This was reported in media all over the country, not conservative media. And even Huffington Post, the leftist website, reported that Obama had a jobs council and he never convened it. Even though the country is in economic ruins and there are no jobs, and many people are living day-to-day on part-time jobs because of his Obamacare, he never felt like ever calling a meeting of his jobs council with the brightest CEOs in America that he named to that council. He never had a meeting in a year. But during that year, he had 10 golf outings and 106 fundraisers for the Democratic Party and the Obama campaign. So he had time to golf and go to 106 fundraisers, but never called a single meeting. Actually, excuse me, I just got that wrong. That was during half of a year, because I grabbed a news report, a very serious newspaper that reported he golfed 10 times and attended 106 fundraisers during a 6-month period where he could find no time to call one meeting of his jobs council. Then he went another half year with no meeting of the jobs council, and then he disbanded it. He closed it completely, even though there's 12 million Americans without jobs. To me, that's the same guy who never felt like showing up for class at Columbia, And in all these years, Kerry, one person emailed me that said, "You're wrong. He definitely went to Columbia. I've read your articles, and you're wrong. I saw him there once. He was in a bar on Amsterdam Avenue that all the Columbia kids hung out in, and he's such an arrogant guy. He was smoking a cigarette at the bar and blowing smoke rings in the air." And I said to myself, that's Obama. That's him right there. He went there, and he spent his time hanging out at a bar, drinking, smoking cigarettes, probably smoking pot, and blowing smoke rings in the air, because he thought he was more important than the rest of us. And his, daydreaming all day was about how to take over America and how to kill jobs and how to turn us into a socialist state. And, Kerry, it worked.
Yeah, well, the Choom Gang, and...
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable.
Exactly.
But
unbelievable. And by the way, there's actually a website that keeps track of how many rounds of golf Obama plays. And so far, it's 163 rounds of golf and counting. While America's at war, while Russia threatens World War III, while the economy's in shambles, while millions of people have given up hope of ever working again, while record numbers of Americans are living in poverty, while black unemployment is double that of white, and while more people are on food stamps, welfare, disability, and entitlements than ever before, this guy's played golf 163 rounds. And yet people in the media criticized George W. Bush. He played golf a grand total of 29 times as president until he gave it up. He quit out of respect for the troops in harm's way. And this guy takes over the presidency, and there's troops in harm's way every day of his presidency, and he's golfed 163 rounds and doesn't have time for a jobs council meeting. Folks, he is the same guy that I didn't know at Columbia University.
Yeah, I actually knew somebody who knew him at Columbia and mostly played basketball with him.
There you go. There you go. So he did more than blow smoke rings in the air. He also played basketball occasionally. So, it gives you an idea of who this guy is. And I always used to tell the joke when I ran for president in 2008. People used to ask me about Obama, and I said, I never saw him, never heard of him, never met him. And the media would say, well, how could that be? And I'd say, well, he was probably out smoking pot and attending Communist Party meetings. And everybody would laugh. And I'd say, don't laugh. It's probably true. And sure enough, someone pointed out to me, I'm a little too busy to sit around reading Obama's autobiography, but they said go grab his autobiography at the library and open up to a certain page, and you will see on that page that Obama says in his own autobiography, he wrote it, and he says he spent a lot of his time at Columbia going to Cooper Union in Union Square and attending Socialist Party meetings. So my kind of guess that was kind of a joke said with, half facetiously, turns out to be exactly right. So he's playing basketball, blowing smoke rings, hanging out at bars, and he was going to, Socialist Party meetings. Okay, instead of communist meetings, they were socialist. That's Obama, right?
What's the difference? What's the difference between socialism and communism anyway?
Well, and by the way, what really is the difference? From my own reading, there is no difference other than the fact socialism is an economic system. Communism is more political, where people are herded to their deaths for not supporting the socialist economic system, and they're sent to brainwash camps. It's much more severe, and it's much more political and involves brainwashing. Socialism really just is a government takeover of business and redistribution of wealth, and that's certainly what's happening in the United States today. So if you think communist is too harsh a word when I mention Obama, then okay, he's a socialist.
Yeah, well, I think based on your writing and your speaking, Wayne, you're ripe for a re-education camp when we get down to them,
Well, yeah, they'll probably rename it an IRS re-education camp, because that's who's carrying out the punishment. So I think I was already, targeted for IRS re-education, and it was 3 years long, and they didn't re-educate me at all, and I managed to get out in the media and make sure that I am loud, and I've got a megaphone, and the whole world knows that this guy's a thug, and he's using government and the IRS just like a Gestapo, and I know that Dr. Benjamin Carson, who many think could be the next president of the United States as a Republican, a brilliant neurosurgeon, said the exact same words on Fox News. And I'm always careful, Kerry, I'm Jewish, and the word Gestapo scares a lot of Jews. They say, you're exaggerating. No, you're not. The Gestapo was about fear and intimidation. And so I'm leaving out the murder part. Obviously, Obama's not killing anyone, but what he's
doing
we know
of.
freezing, at least right now, right? He's freezing free speech, and he's trying to intimidate his opponents, just like the Gestapo would with a knock on the door. That you're afraid they're going to drag you away, so you're quiet. You don't want to criticize the leader when that might happen. That's what Obama does with the IRS. The IRS is being used like the Gestapo.
Hey, look at that reporter for Fox News, I believe. She gets a knock in the middle of the night in D.C., and they break into her house. They take her notes, and purportedly they're doing it's a national security matter, and she's scared to death. And this was last August. Nothing's heard about it. Finally, she says, this is what happened. And I think that in itself is a criminal offense under the national security law, to say that your house has been broken into and they've taken materials on a national security case. But she finally says, this is what happened. The press is mute because it's Fox News. They could care less. And this is the rat hole that our country is going down, Wayne.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it extends much further, Kerry. Remember, I'm in Las Vegas as we do this interview, and I just had opened the Las Vegas newspaper when you called for our interview, and it was lunchtime, and I was opening the newspaper. And what's the cover story? It's a nice little old lady named Angeline Clark, and she looks about, 65, 70 years old, and she's holding Christmas cards in her hand. And as we make this recording, it's March, but she's holding Christmas cards. So that caught my eye. I wanted to know why a lady holding Christmas cards would be on the cover of the Vegas newspaper in mid-March. And the answer is that she got a bunch of older ladies together to write Christmas cards, handwritten and hand-signed, to bedridden soldiers at a Maryland hospital, and asked them to have a blessed Christmas. And every single card was returned to her and her group because they had a religious mention in them. And even a guy lying in bed who fought for his country with no arms or no legs is not allowed, according to this government, to get a letter that mentions the word Christmas or God in it. Kerry, there's something really wrong. I'm Jewish. I'm not here arguing because I'm a church pastor. There's something wrong with this. There's something rancid about Barack Obama and the United States of America under Barack Obama. Rancid. There's a good word. It rots to the core.
Yeah, rotten to the core. On that note, Wayne, people are going to want to read your work. They're going to want to find out more about you. Where do they go?
they go to my website, root4america.com. That's ROOT, 4america.com. Or you can find me at Fox News, Blaze, or any number of websites. And, of course, my book gives you the whole QT of what's happening, the lowdown of what's happening to America. And I got the plan figured. I know this guy like the back of my hand. I know Barack Obama. I understand every move he makes like a chess master. That's my one claim to fame in life, Kerry. I read this guy like the back of my hand. My book is the ultimate Obama survival guide, and it gives you an 18-point plan to counteract everything Obama's going to do. And I wrote it about a year ago, and everything I said he'd do, he's done. So get it, because I'm telling you, I've got the next 2 years figured out, too. The ultimate Obama survival guide.
Yeah, and go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll have a link to Wayne's site there. Wayne, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being on.
Kerry, God bless. Let's hope by saying the word God, they don't take us off the air. God bless you.
Not yet, anyway. Bye-bye. Thanks, Wayne.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.